Two British princesses are getting swept up in the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. Beatrice and Eugenie are the daughters of former Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. And CNN reports from London recently released Epstein files feature their parents' names hundreds of times.
But let's move on to some other issues. And there are reports that Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie have been banned from attending Royal Ascot in June, and they won't be allowed to join their family in the royal procession either.
Two British princesses, Beatrice and Eugenie, daughters of former Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, have been pulled into the vortex of the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. With the recent release of explosive Epstein files, their parents' names appear hundreds of times throughout the documents, casting a long and unavoidable shadow over the entire royal family.
Imagine finding out your mother told a friend you were away on a shagging weekend. Now imagine that friend is a convicted thief. It feels like an egregious breach of trust, but this is precisely the level of humiliation Princess Eugenie had to endure when 3 million new Epstein files were released last week for all the world to see.
Princess Eugenie is now in full panic mode. Interpol has pulled her in for questioning, not as a bystander, not as a witness, but as someone who allegedly pocketed Epstein bribes directly. It turns out, her mother Sarah Ferguson wasn't the only one on Epstein's payroll. According to Epstein's own victims, who are now stepping forward and speaking out, Eugenie was being compensated for a deeply disturbing role, arranging access to young girls and silencing those who dared to speak. If federal investigators aren't dismissing these claims lightly, and for good reason, because the Epstein files themselves corroborate them. The media has tried to paint Beatrice and Eugenie as helpless pawns in their mother's game, but that narrative is falling apart. Consider this. Imagine discovering that your own mother described you to a close associate as being away on a shagging weekend, and that associate turned out to be a convicted offender. It would feel like the deepest, most humiliating betrayal imaginable. That is precisely what Princess Eugenie was forced to confront when 3 million newly released Epstein documents flooded the public domain. These were not children being manipulated in the dark. They were adults who saw what was happening and chose silence. When Eugenie and Beatrice traveled to Miami to visit Epstein alongside their mother, they were 19 and 18 years old, legal adults by every measure. This wasn't an innocent family trip. That lunch took place just 5 days after Epstein walked out of prison following a conviction for soliciting from a minor. Email records indicate Sarah Ferguson made the trip to Miami with both daughters, and that Epstein may have personally funded their $14,000 in flights. These were not children caught in an impossible situation. These were adults who had every ability to walk away and didn't.
Lunch in Miami that occurred just 5 days after Epstein was released from jail for soliciting sex from thousands.
The email trail tells a damning story. In a private message to Epstein, Sarah Ferguson discussed an interview she had given to journalist Geordie Greig, framing it as an effort to protect her public image. When Epstein pushed back on the article's content, Sarah didn't hesitate to fight for herself. And she didn't do it alone. Beatrice was right there beside her, so actively involved in persuading the journalist not to publish anything unflattering about Epstein, a man who had already served prison time for targeting underage girls. If Beatrice was running interference for Epstein, it stands to reason that Eugenie was doing the same. And according to evidence now in Interpol's possession, Eugenie wasn't merely a passive participant. She was allegedly accepting payments in exchange for making victims disappear from the narrative. The Epstein files confirm that Epstein bankrolled Sarah Ferguson for over 15 years, beginning immediately after her 1996 divorce from Prince Andrew. He wired cash, offered debt relief, and records show Fergie herself admitted to accepting 15,000 euros from him as recently as 2011. Until now, the public assumed Sarah was the only one profiting. Interpol says otherwise, and Eugenie is now at the center of that financial web. The infatuation Epstein had with both princesses is well documented in his own correspondence. In one message to Sarah, he wrote directly, "Any chance of your daughter saying hello?" A chilling window into the nature of that relationship. Now, Eugenie must answer for every transaction, every favor, every payment that passed between her and history's most reviled predator. And as if the Interpol investigation weren't enough, she has now been officially banned from Royal Ascot alongside her sister, barred from joining the royal family at one of the year's most prestigious public events.
that fair if it's their parents at fault and they're being punished, or have these two also been fairly money-hungry grifters who have been trading on their royal titles?
Royal author Andrew Lowy did not mince words when speaking to the Daily Express. In his view, the princess's first and most necessary step is to renounce their royal titles entirely, because those titles are the only reason anyone is still paying attention. Beatrice, for instance, has leveraged her Royal Highness designation to open doors across the Middle East for business ventures. Without the crown, she is simply Mrs. Jummapeli Motsi, a private citizen with no special access and no public platform. The titles, according to Lowy, are instruments of financial gain, the same instruments their parents used and abused. He also raised pointed questions about their charity work. Is this genuine philanthropy, or is it an elaborate exercise in reputation laundering? Are they being compensated for their involvement? These are the uncomfortable questions that are no longer going away.
It's an astute observation. You can't ignore the judgment issue. Choosing to spend time with a man who has already served time for targeting underage girls raises serious moral questions, fair or not. That association, Beatrice and Eugenie jumping on a plane to spend time with Epstein, along with Fergie, has reputational consequences. The monarchy has to think long-term and ask it is about safeguarding the brand.
Behind closed palace doors, Eugenie is reportedly in full crisis mode. Her singular focus right now is not her reputation, not her title, and not her public image. It's her children. August, 5, and Ernest, 2, whom she shares with husband Jack Brooksbank, are her primary concern, and she is desperately trying to shield them from the devastation unfolding around the family name. Our sources close to Eugenie say she has been quietly exploring her options, and one of those options involves the most unconventional ally imaginable, Prince Harry. Eugenie and Harry have always maintained a close bond, and Harry has reportedly been urging her for some time to join forces with him and Meghan in their California-based ventures. For Eugenie, Harry represents something she desperately needs right now, proof that there is life, and a meaningful one, beyond the institution of the monarchy. He is one of the few people she feels she can speak to honestly. However, royal insiders warn that if Eugenie does make that leap and aligns herself with Harry and Meghan, it will almost certainly mean the permanent end of her relationship with Prince William and Princess Catherine.
Eugenie be banned from royal events. Princesses won't be attending high-profile events for the foreseeable future. This reportedly includes Royal Ascot in June, where they would usually appear in the royal box and join the rest of the family in the carriage progression. The princesses themselves are named hundreds of times in the Epstein files. There are a number of connections with Epstein that are what you might call tangential.
The public, it turns out, has little sympathy to offer. If Eugenie surrenders her royal title, there will be no mourning, no farewell tributes, only relief and perhaps a quiet round of applause. The crown she once hid behind is no longer a shield. If anything, it may now serve as a magnet for consequences. Her royal status, the very thing she has leveraged her entire adult life, could be the reason she faces a harsher legal reckoning than any ordinary citizen would. And this time, her mother cannot ride in to rescue her. There is no quiet arrangement to be made, no favor to be called in. Eugenie knows this, which is precisely why reports are swirling that she is weighing an escape to California, or possibly a permanent relocation to Portugal. The real question is whether Interpol will allow her to go anywhere at all, or whether Princess Eugenie's next wardrobe will not be designer gowns at royal events, but an orange jumpsuit.